The answer can be found at Volvo's excavator factory in Changwon, Korea. The company turns out 16,000 excavators from their factories worldwide every year, each one taking 5.5 days to make. Here in Korea, they make the big ones. At 70 tons, they are the Goliaths. But don't be fooled, these heavy-duty monsters are more human than you might think. The design of an excavator has many similarities to the human body, and they can, in their way, be just as graceful and delicate. The body of the excavator can be compared to a human torso. The undercarriage to the legs, the arm and boom to a muscle-bound human arm, and the attachments to the hand and fingers. When loading or lifting, a stress will move from the bucket to the arm to the boom and undercarriage in the blink of an eye. And when heavy loads are put on the structure, it's designed to deform like a body to absorb that stress. And of course, they have to be able to dance to the tune of the operator. But the most human characteristic is not visible when you watch an excavator at work. An excavator has a big heart, a massive hydraulic pump which pushes oil, like blood, around the arteries of the machine. And the nerve center of the excavator is the main control valve, otherwise known as the MCV. The MCV directs the hydraulic oil from the pump to specific areas, to the boom arm, to the bucket, and to the tracks. The secret of the excavator's extraordinary ability is the way the MCV decides how much oil to let through to its different parts. The more oil, the bigger the movement. With hydraulics, it's possible for a small amount of effort at one end to be translated into lifting a monster weight at the other. Each hole in the MCV is drilled with remarkable precision. The tiniest difference in size will affect the flow of oil and therefore the hydraulics. With the help of an endoscope, the MCV is cleared of any minute dirt particles that could delay the machine's reaction to the operator. Spools are inserted into all the holes, each one controlling the amount of oil flowing to a different part of the machine. By moving the joysticks in the cab, the driver sends a signal to a computer which acts like a nerve system, deciding how much pressure needs to be applied where in order to fulfill a command. And the accuracy and delicacy is quite incredible. Putting together all the different parts happens on the 110-metre-long assembly line. It takes 150 highly skilled workers to make an excavator. The boom arm needs to be very strong, but if they're too heavy, then they'll be slow and cumbersome. The solution is surprising. At first glance, it may look solid, but this excavator's arm is actually a hollow box structure. This makes it light and maneuverable. The way the arm can be both hollow and strong is down to some very clever robots. The precision with which these robots can weld means they can produce slower and deeper welds. The deeper the weld, the stronger the join. These guys can finish off 20 arms in a day, getting through 3 tons of welding material. And they don't make mistakes because they're programmed to self-diagnose and mend themselves. This is artificially intelligent welding. After the parts have been made, comes the assembly. First, the union of the upper structure to the undercarriage, romantically called the marriage. But before the vows can be completed, there's a little preparation to do. All the cogs must be greased up. On the chassis is a big wheel which has other cogs attached to it. The superstructure has a mini cog on its underside which attaches to this wheel. And this joint enables it to turn around 360 degrees. It's a simple idea that makes the excavator super versatile. A single crane is used to lift and carefully position the cab onto the deck of the superstructure. Then they're screwed together using just 5 bolts. Once the 5th bolt is in, the marriage ceremony is complete. The next step on the assembly line is attaching the arm and all the hydraulics back to the main control valve. Then the first test is to make sure the hydraulics are working. But one of the big secrets to how an excavator works can now be revealed. It may look light enough when it's being lifted by crane, but these full metal jackets weigh up to 12 tons. On the front and back of the excavator sit these massively heavy cast iron counterweights. They need to be heavy because the jobs an excavator can do is directly related to its own weight. Excavators can lift 30% of their weight. They can break objects with a force of 60% of their weight, and the buckets can carry 10% of the machine weight in one go. So the heavier, the better. And carrying one on the front and one on the back means they can change them to suit the job. These 70-ton excavators may be powerful and they may be versatile, but they're no racing cars. In fact, to get around, they need their own fleet of taxis, or rather, super taxis. The excavators are loaded onto the back of trucks, destined for various locations, anywhere in the world where there's heavy construction or destruction. 5 ordinary objects, 5 extraordinary stories. Coming up, the newspaper. Next, on How Do They Do It? It's a familiar sight, a busy kiosk at rush hour on a crowded city street. Hand over your change, buy a paper. But behind the news bought by countless millions on the daily commute, there's another remarkable story. Increasingly, the news you read is printed on this: rubbish. Recycled newspapers and magazines. The triumphs and heartaches of 1 million people bought, read and consigned to the garbage heap. So how do they turn yesterday's news into tomorrow's front page? Welcome to Aylesford Newsprint, 50 miles southeast of London. This 100-acre site is home to the biggest paper recycling plant in Europe. It's dedicated to making one thing: newsprint. Newsprint is what they call the raw paper that newspapers are printed on, and the world consumes a staggering 38 million tons of it every year. Aylesford alone generates nearly 500,000 tons of newsprint a year. The operation is, quite simply, enormous. This is where tomorrow's news begins. The recovered paper store consists of 3 giant bays. Together, they're the size of a shopping mall. At the rate of 1 every 10 minutes, trucks move in and out to unload up to 18 tons of waste paper each. As the week goes on, the room is gradually filled to the rafters with waste paper.
In this one bay, there's approximately 3,000 tonnes of newspapers and magazines.
Most of this waste has already been recycled. Who knows how many times? But mixed in with the paper are rogue items that threaten the entire process. Banks of magnets and mesh barriers make sure they don't get through.
Plastics, tins, wood, metal, staples that hold magazines together.